Welcome to I Am African Podcast. I'm your host, Liz, and season 2 is here. It's different setting, and fortunately for you, same host. As you're watching this, you're watching the introduction to our season 2. But before we get into the topics of this season, I would like to say this. World Cup is coming to the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And we have the World Cup segments that are coming right after this introduction. I'm going to say this. Africa is a continent with 54 countries. And for the first time ever in the history of the continent, we are going to have 10 countries that qualified to be part of this year's World Cup. And it is exciting for us. And of course, as I Am African podcast, we have to talk about big things, historical moments in Africa's time, right? We're going to talk about the World Cup. We're going to talk about the countries that have qualified. And one of the biggest reasons why Africa ended up with 10 countries, made history, is because my home country, Democratic Republic of Congo, was the 10th country that qualified for the World Cup. And of course, we had to go through Africa, we had to go through the world to be able to make it. And they'll be playing in Houston, Texas against Portugal. What an exciting moment for me. What an exciting moment for every Congolese person. But what is even more exciting is Africa is making history. We are going to have 10 countries representing. And one of those countries is Cape Verde, which qualified for the first time in the country's existence. And we're so excited. We're excited to share this with you. The World Cup segments are coming and we're going to get into it. We are also going to talk about not just Africa's representation in the continent, how Africa is represented outside of the continent, in Europe, in the US, everywhere around the world. After the World Cup segment, we're going to release the new episodes for our season. And there is going to be interesting. I would like to remind you this. Season 1 was about learning. We were learning about Africa. We were learning about our true African identity. Of course, we talked about the fact that Africa is a continent with 54 countries, but a lot of people always mistake it for a country. And we talked about the different things that we have to address as African misconceptions and things like that. But this season is going to be different. It is going to go deeper. We are talking about the living, the experiences that we live as Africans all over the world, whether in the continent or outside of the continent. We are going to touch on different topics. And now that we mentioned the topics, I'm going to tell you this. The first thing we're going to do is revisit the African identity. Who are we truly as Africans in today's world? Are people African because it's convenient? Or are people Africans or feeling like they have to prove the African identity because they went back home and they don't fit into that world anymore, or they are outside of the continent? And anytime they said something, the first thing someone is going to say is, where are you from? You have an accent. So we always have to prove our African identity. But in 2026, who are we as Africans? What is our true identity? We're going to get into those discussions, but we're going to talk about African parents, right? We're going to sit down here. And now, before I get there, as you can see, our setting is different. We are going to have in-person conversation with our guests. They're going to sit here next to me and we're going to talk. We're going to get deeper into the conversations and the topics that we will have. But for this particular episode, African parents, the love, the pressure, the expectations that comes with African parents, right? But this time we wanted to do it a little bit different. We don't want to just talk about African parents and how they raised us and all those things. We are going to sit down and have a conversation with someone who is parented and not they are now parenting. What are some things that they learned? Maybe all the craziness that we experienced was worth it because now it helped you be able to parent differently, right? But we'll get more into the details of that. We are going to talk about social media and African youth. In African families, parents have expectations, families have expectations for you to be a lawyer, for you to be an engineer and be something big or doctor. But there are people that take risks and start career in social media. So how does that work for them? It's the same thing as someone wanting to be a teacher or an artist. the reaction is a bit different. But how can African youth leverage the use of social media to make a career out of it? We will find out when we talk with our guest, who is going to be very familiar face to all of you. But we're going to talk about mental health. And when I had a conversation with a friend about mental health, he laughed and he said, "Are you sure you want to do that? Because a lot of pastors will be offended." Which is kind of true, because some African pastors, they feel like talking about mental health should not be a conversation. They feel like we should be praying, we should read the Bible more, we should turn to God to fix everything. But we are going to have an opinion, or let's say a perspective from a pastor. And we're also going to sit down with therapists to talk about mental health in African community. Is it really a Western thing, or is this something that we should also have conversation about? We're going to talk about money. Africans and money. I love money. Everybody loves money. We need money to survive, especially in today's economy with all these gas prices. But listen, how far are we willing to go to make money? And what are we willing to do to have the money to be able to live comfortably? And why is money such a sensitive topic for African households? At what stage do we start having those conversations? We're going to sit here with someone who is just now being introduced to the concept of money. We're going to talk about how they're learning about that process, right? We're going to talk about double standards in African communities, and this is going to surround gender, culture, accountability, beauty, family, and marriage, all of those things. There are double standards in everything. But one thing I would like to mention is someone asked me when we were talking about this double standards topic, right? Someone asked me and said, "I do have a question, because I feel like women, you guys, there's like a little bit of double standards when it comes to beauty, because every time I compliment a woman, she looks at me and said, well, I didn't do it for you. I didn't dress this way for you. I didn't do my hair this way for you. I did it for myself." And then he said, "Do you guys truly do it for yourself? Or do you do it hoping that you get compliment?" And I thought about this. I was like, ladies, do we really do it for ourselves? Because I know for me, when I dress nice, I would like to get compliments. I would like to hear from the opposite gender that they do like what I wear. But how much of it is it me doing it for myself versus me doing it because I appreciate those comments? I appreciate those compliments. Or some people just do it for attention. I would like to know this. So if you have an opinion on this, please let me know. Do we truly do it for ourselves? I thought that was a good question. We're going to talk about love, dating, and marriage. And of course, as Africans, we have to talk about this, right? We have to talk about the reality versus expectations that our families have, what we expect for ourselves. When we are dating, what are some things that we prioritize? Does family expectations put pressure on how we date or the type of people that we choose to love? Does family expectation prevent you from finding truly what you're looking for because you have to meet those expectations? We're going to talk about the fact that there are some traditions that we need to let go of, right? How does tradition affect our modern life? And what are some traditions that we can keep and some of that we can get rid of? We will talk about the future of Africa. What are we as Africans doing to move ourselves forward? What are we doing to progress as Africans with the opportunities that are presented to us? We hear so much misconception around Africans versus African Americans. And there are some Africans out there that call out African Americans and say, you have these opportunities. You live in the United States, you have opportunities, and you don't leverage those opportunities. There's so many misconceptions about, oh, they're just lazy, they don't take on opportunities and move forward. But my question is this: for all the Africans outside of the continent, you also have opportunities. How many of you are leveraging those opportunities to be able to move forward in life, to be able to build a better lifestyle for yourself? Because as much as we have opinion on other people, we need to also look in the mirror and think about what we're doing that is different. As Africans, how are we building ourselves? We're going to talk about colorism, beauty, and hair. There's a lot of colorism, especially what I have seen in my Congolese community. I'm not going to speak for the entire African continent, but I would like to know if this is very common in your respective countries as well. We see a lot of colorism in the Congolese community. People go as far as bleaching their skin so that they can be seen as pretty, they can be seen as different, so they can get attention. Or some people just don't appreciate themselves, their body, and everything. So they try to change who they are to fit into this narrative that people have created. When it comes to beauty, hair, there are a lot of conversations around it. And one thing that I would like to ask all of you, when we have conversation about any of these topics with our guests, these are people that have experienced life. They're going to be sharing their own experiences and perceptions on some of these topics. I would like to ask you to please be understanding and respectful, because these are sensitive conversations and they're very sensitive topics for a lot of people. And we do understand that. So when people take risks, come and join us to have this conversation, we truly appreciate that. And we ask that you, as viewers, as people tuning into this podcast, are able to respect that. But also, this podcast, we created this as a community, a safe space for all of us to be able to have the uncomfortable conversations, to be able to sit here and have conversation about things that no everyone is scared of. And these guests are taking the risk to come and have those uncomfortable conversations. So if you're one of those people that is interested in coming on this podcast and having a conversation with us, or if you just want to share your story, feel free to comment, share this with your friends, have these conversations, and use this as a conversation starter for you. But going back to the topic of beauty, I wanted to have a woman so we can sit here and have conversation, because a lot of us feel like it only touches women, but it affects both genders. So I decided to have a man. We are going to sit here with the man that took the risk, knows what comes with it, and is going to sit here and we're going to have a conversation about colorism, beauty, and hair. And while we're on this topic, I would like to share a story. When I first came to the US, I was under the assumption that when it comes to beauty or products, all those things, right, there was the white people products and versus the black people products. And my family, we had a big family. And so, of course, we were always leaning towards the brands that were cheaper and came in like bigger bottles, because it will be able to benefit our family. We never consider about the quality of the brand or how it's going to affect our skin. Until I was older, I realized that there are some brands that work for my skin and some that just don't. And a friend of mine said, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. And that is actually true. It sounds very like something that we've all heard, but for me, I was still living in this world where I was looking at brands like Olay and thinking it's my white friends that should be using those kind of brands. Those are not black people brands. Until a friend of mine who's actually African, she looked at me and said, I use Olay. And that's why my skin is like this. And I said, wow. And at that point, I was breaking out. And I went to the store. I bought similar products, which included, like, Olay. And I started using Olay. After 2 weeks, I saw a big change on my face. And for me, I feel like Olay changed my life. Even though I used to think Olay was a white people brand, I got so comfortable. It was a little bit expensive for my pockets. I will say that. I'm not saying that it's going to be cheap, but the result I got was worth it for me. So sometimes it's not really about the quantity, it is about the quality that you get. And also try to find products that work for your skin, products that work for you, instead of trying to think about, oh, is this white for white people or black people? That's not how it works. And that's how we end up in places where we want to try things like bleaching our skin to make things work, to make ourselves look different, when we can just find the right product that will be able to help us feel more confident in ourselves. We're going to talk about hustle culture. Africans hustle. We do hustle. I know a lot of Africans that wake up every day hustling, wanting to make sure that they create a better life for themselves and their families. But at what point does hard work turn into burnout? And do we even know what burning out is? That is a good conversation we're going to have. And our guest is going to be somebody who's going to give us opinion on a different topic as well. We're going to sit down with someone who is going to talk about education in African communities. I'm going to say this. As Africans, we value education, we value hard work. But also, we have people that don't take education seriously, that don't see that it's necessary, which is okay. And not everything is going to work for everyone. But do we create opportunities for the people in our community as Africans to educate them, to be able to show them that the world is beyond their community, is beyond who they're around? There are so many opportunities out there. You just have to educate them and tell them what those opportunities are. And this particular person started mission within the continent that is helping a lot of children. And I can't wait for you to hear this story and be able to share this with the rest of you. And of course, we're going to have respectful conversations. We are going to have conversations that are deep. It's not going to be for shock or entertainment. We are going to have conversations so that we are able to understand each other as Africans. We understand our experiences that we live inside of the continent and outside of the continent. How many of you have gone back to your African country and felt like you have to prove something, prove whether you're truly African? And then when you leave, they look at you different. They look at you like you don't belong. That's the world we're in today. And we are going to have those conversations. This is I Am African podcast. This is a community that we created, not just for me and my team. We created this for every single one of you, whether you're African or not, whether you want to learn about the continent or you live these experiences. Join the conversation, join our community. This is a space for all of us. And this is I Am African podcast. Season 2 is here. The World Cup segments are coming. And we're going to get deep into this season with the topics that I just shared with you. And if you feel like you want to be a part of this conversation, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Spotify, our social media, follow us, comment and share this. Use this as a conversation starter for all of you and your friends. And join us, join our movement, join our community. This is I Am African podcast. I'm your host, Liz, and I will see you next time.